Our next speaker coming up, which is Zandra, and she is speaking also from the Competent Communication Manual, speech number 1, her icebreaker speech, and her speech title is My Various Careers. So her speech time will be 4 to 6 minutes, and objectives of her speech today are to begin speaking before an audience and to discover speaking skills she already has and maybe some that need attention. Zandra was a Toastmaster from June '94 until July of '97. She attained an ATM Able Toastmaster before leaving the organization. And after a break of 12 years, she's returned to relearn everything she thinks she has forgotten at that time, which is probably not much. So please help me welcome Zandra.
Oh, little hearts, how cute. My various careers. Greetings, fellow Toastmasters. And you're not really a guest, but we'll call you a guest for today since you're a guest. Over the years, I've had a wide variety of jobs and careers, and I'd like to tell you about some of them. I started out in a bakery as a cookie counter, where I would count the cookies as they came out of the oven and pack them up for sale. Well, I got bored with this very quickly, so I went to work for Woolworths as a short order cook slash waitress slash dishwasher. Now, this job was crazy making because I'd have to take the orders, cook them, and then deliver them to the customer while still waiting on tables and doing the dishes. At 16, that was pretty overwhelming, so I didn't stay very long at that job either. On my 18th birthday, I joined the Army and went to California to learn Russian. I loved language school, but I got sick very early in my training, so the Army, in their infinite wisdom, decided to send me to data processing school, typing school, and personnel action school, all of which I graduated with honors. I finally ended up as a personnel action specialist. I got out of the Army when I got pregnant with my son and went to work in airport security at the Baltimore-Washington Airport in Washington, D.C. I did that during the day. At night, I worked as a night maid at the airport hotel. Working 2 jobs and being a mom was tough, but I managed it. I also spent time working toward my degree. Being a military wife was a challenge. After leaving Baltimore, Washington, we got orders to Berlin, where I worked for the Air Force Mess Hall as a cashier and a clerk typist. I had another baby in Berlin, so I quit paid employment for a while and continued to work on my degree. After leaving Germany, my first husband and I were stationed at Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska. While at Offutt, I worked for the base commissary as a cashier, the base education office as a secretary, the Office of Engineering and Environmental Planning as a clerk typist. I was also lucky enough to work for Air Force Space Command as a secretary, and Strategic Air Command Military Logistics as a clerk typist. The job I held the longest was at the 3902nd Air Base Wing Public Affairs Office as an executive secretary. During my time in public affairs, I helped with the base open houses, gave out press releases, and wrote biographies for all colonels and above at Offutt. There were over 120 colonels and 30 generals at that time. In addition, I also helped proofread the base newspaper. After I left civil service the first time, I went to work in a wide variety of temporary jobs. Being a temp was a real challenge. I found myself as a cashier, a secretary, an encyclopedia salesperson, a pizza delivery girl, and a security guard. I even counted cows during a rodeo auction. My boss said I was one of her most versatile employees. But tired of not having a steady job, I went back to civil service as a purchasing agent for the Army Corps of Engineers. My new husband and I got orders to England, where I worked for the NCO Club as a bouncer, the billeting office as a clerk, and the Judge Advocate General's office as a volunteer secretary. I worked a few months for the prosecution and another few months for the defense. It was great to see both sides of the process. It was here I was able to interview witnesses, take statements, and generally get the basics ready for the trial. It was stimulating work. Brian and I finally moved back to the United States and decided to live here in Washington. My husband grew up in this area, and I fell in love with Puget Sound, so we wanted to live here after he got out of the military. Here in Seattle, I went to work for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, first in personnel, as a secretary, timekeeper, then as an education specialist, and finally as a classification specialist. I soon got promoted to supply room supervisor. After a few months, I got promoted again to paralegal. As a paralegal, I worked for 9 attorneys in 4 states, kept track of over 700 litigation cases, handled all HUD foreclosures in Washington State, and kept the law library updated. It was a very busy job. After 9 years at HUD, 6 of them as a paralegal, I finally left civil service again. It was then I went to work for Keene Incorporated, where I learned to perform technical support for Microsoft products. I loved helping people with their computers and soon became a second-level technician. When Keene closed, I went to work for Microsoft as a software tester and computer tech. I was lucky enough to work on the Windows 2000 compatibility team, but left when the product shipped. After leaving Microsoft, I went back to doing temp work. I was fortunate to work as an assistant administrator. It was one of my favorite jobs. Also during this time, I worked at Washington Mutual as a software tester. It was here I made the most money I've ever made. I also did the least amount of work for those big bucks. Isn't life grand? After 9/11, I had a major breakdown and was unable to work full-time. So, of course, I opened my own computer tech business where I could fix people's computers in their homes. I was also employed part-time in a fabric store. This was a great job. I worked 8 hours a week, but really enjoyed helping many creative and talented people with their projects. It broke my heart when the store moved to Issaquah and I couldn't go with them. I am now medically retired, so my employment days are over. But I look back at all the things I've done and marvel at all the types of work I've been able to do over the years. It's been fun, stressful, and at times overwhelming. But I've enjoyed my careers, and I hope you enjoy learning about them too. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Why, yeah. Wow. I don't know what to say. You've done more than I think I've ever thought about doing.